Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amber Sharples. I'm the Executive Director here at the Oklahoma Arts Council, and I want to first and foremost thank all of you for attending today's town hall with our arts educators. The purpose of this call is to have an initial update to you as arts educators as to how the Oklahoma Arts Council is responding initially to the pandemic and our agency's response and what we're trying to do to equip you with resources, as well as initial responses that we're taking that will impact your grants. We have updated and have revised grant criteria that has been approved by our council's executive committee that we will hope will give you more flexibility and responsiveness to the pandemic, and also how we know that the pandemic has impacted programming, obviously with schools being closed. And we know that you are pivoting in this space. We also feel, as leaders of the arts sector, we wanted to facilitate a safe space that you could share with each other, your peers, your innovation, and let us know about barriers and ways that we could help you support one another and help guide us as we continue to look at how we can support arts education moving forward, not only for this fiscal year, but as we prepare for the next school year, whatever that may look like. I want to recognize that Ann Neal, our council chair, is on the phone call because she wants to hear directly from you so she can work with our council, our governing board, so that we can equip you with the resources as best we can. I also want to introduce our staff. Chandra Boyd, our deputy director, is on the call. Joel Gavin, our director of marketing and communications. Thomas Tran, our grants director. Heidi Costello, our grants and programs assistant. And Jennifer Allen Barron, our arts education director. This is just our initial team wanting to support you in arts education. And I want to thank you first and foremost as a parent who has now pivoted myself in doing the schooling from home. And if I didn't ever appreciate you to my full capacity, I want to thank you for what you do day in and day out on behalf of our kids and children across the state. This has been a true eye-opening experience. My brother's an educator, and I've always felt that I've had some insight as to what the education system looks like and some of the challenges you have, but this is really informing us in a new way, and we want to be responsive in this space. So thank you for being here today. We really appreciate what you do, and we want to do whatever we can to help you kind of kind of thinking in this new space as we look at arts education currently in the short term and long-term strategies. So with that, I'm going to have Chandra Boyd, our deputy director, give a little bit of input on an overview of the format of our call today. Thank you.
Thanks, Amber. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are all doing well, and we really appreciate your time and the opportunity to be together today. I'm going to go ahead and have Thomas, if you'll advance to the agenda. We'll go over our agenda for this meeting. First, we'll hear from Amber on an update from our agency. Thomas, our grants director, will provide updates on the arts education grants for the current fiscal year. Jennifer Allen Barron will present resources for arts education. And then we'll come back to Amber for just some closing thoughts before breaking you all out into breakout rooms in Zoom. So we've divided you when you registered, you signed up kind of identifiers if you were an administrator or an educator, and then also if you were rural or suburban, or urban. So we'll break you all out, and that's where we'll have our conversation and discussion before ending the call. So we'll have Amber kind of close us out before we break out into those rooms. Let's see. The purpose of those breakout rooms is really to have an opportunity for our staff to facilitate a discussion with you all and hear from you what's happening in your schools and hear your ideas and strategies for how you're serving your school community during this pandemic. This is also just a great opportunity for networking, collaboration, and a supportive space for you to share your planning and maybe your planning into the next school year. So just a bit of housekeeping. Thomas has muted all of the participants during our presentation, but once we go into those breakout rooms, you will be unmuted. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the chat function. Heidi will be monitoring our chat bar, and we'll be answering those questions in real time as best to our ability. And then if there's a question that we don't get to during this call, we'll make sure we answer you offline. We'll also be following up with everyone, providing you a recording and some resources after this meeting. When we get into the breakout rooms, and I'll give a little bit more information when we do that, but I'll kind of share like the ins and outs of how that works, and fingers crossed that it works. Zoom is a new platform for us, as you all are learning that as well. So I think we'll take it back to Amber.
All right. Thank you, Chandra. Okay, I'm going to first start off just with an agency update. Effective Monday, March 16th, in response to the pandemic, our entire staff moved to full-time telework status, and our physical office was closed. We will remain in this status until it's determined by agency leadership in consultation with state and health officials when it is appropriate and safe for us to go back to our physical office space. And because our physical office space is closed, if you're sending things to us via mail or FedEx, it may be delayed in getting to us. This also includes, there may be a delay in hard copy checks. If checks are being mailed to your district or to your school site, there may be some delay in process of grant payments in terms of the mailing. So I just wanted to let you know I'm going twice a week to our physical office and to the state's mail center. And so I'm trying to do that as infrequently as possible for the safety of me and my child. So that may be delayed, and I just want to let everyone know. However, all emails and phone numbers, which are on our website, and all the resources that we have are still applicable. So you can find our staff through those numbers. I know you all know Jennifer, I'm sure, Thomas, and Heidi very well. But in case you need to get a hold of them, their information is there. I'd like to give just a quick federal update. I'm sure with the CARES Act, the third stimulus, you have probably seen that funding is going out through various channels. While this is an arts education forum, I do want to let you know, in case you work very closely with nonprofits, that there are some nonprofits that are going to be available or eligible to get direct stimulus funding from the National Endowment for the Arts. We have information on our website for those nonprofit organizations. That deadline is next week. So if you have any questions, please contact Jennifer or our staff. We can help get you in contact, or if you have those contacts, to have them contact us. We can talk through that with nonprofit organizations. In addition, 40% of the funding that was given to the National Endowment for the Arts as part of the stimulus package, which equated to $30 million, will be distributed among state arts agencies and regional arts agencies across the nation. Those funds will be packaged in grants that will go out across the state. And what we hope is those will support arts education programs, as well as artists doing direct programs on the ground, kind of boots on the ground. We will have just under $450,000 to re-grant. We're currently looking at the guidelines provided to us about the re-granting of those funds, but you may see announcements coming in the coming weeks about that grant making. We also will be distributing, as part of this call, additional resources for individual artists and small business owners. If you are a consultant in arts education, or you may have any unemployment needs, we're going to have some information that is coming from the Oklahoma Center for Nonprofit, and we will distribute that to this listserv as well, just because we know that we can't assume, just because you're working in schools, that these things might not be applicable to you or your loved ones, your families, or your community. So we will try to get those resources out to you. Joel will be speaking a little bit later on additional resources that we have on our website that will be applicable for you and your community. From a state update, we are looking at the current fiscal year, which ends June 30th. And I'm sure you've seen in the news that there is a current budget shortfall for the remaining 3 months of this current fiscal year. And that impacts our agency as well. It's more than $400 million that we're short. The governor called a special session last Monday, 8 days ago, And the legislature came and gave a few things. They gave unprecedented powers to the governor and triggered the Catastrophic Health Emergency Powers Act. They also overwhelmingly, both the House and the Senate, passed 3 bills to tap into the rainy day fund in order to cover the shortfall. The governor, as part of this process, was required to call the Board of Equalization to declare a revenue failure to trigger the applicability of these 3 bills. The governor was not pleased with some funds that were not included in those 3 bills. Particularly, he was wanting funds for his digital transformation fund. And due to that, he only signed 2 of the 3 bills, which means the rainy day funds that were tapped cover the month of April, but May and June it's still uncertain what's happening between the governor and the legislature in terms of the applicability of the final bill that helps transfer funds from the rainy day fund into the general revenue. What we're hoping is that they can come to some form of agreement so that we do not see cuts to state agencies for the last 2 months of the year. We also know that 1017 funding is also short in the state's coffers. So that's just something causing a little bit of uncertainty in terms of our world. Arts education, I can just guarantee we would hold harmless. We would probably look at cutting other areas of our agency. We've always held arts education as the #1 priority of our agency's funding, but I do want to give you a little bit of update on the ecosystem and what that means. We're also looking at next year's fiscal year 2021 and the likelihood of both oil and gas being low, as well as the pandemic's impact on our economy and what that may mean for state appropriations for our agency to help fund arts education programs statewide, both directly to schools as well as through the support of nonprofits that then also support local school districts. A few things that we're doing to try to lead the sector is we are having conversations with the Lieutenant Governor as well as statewide arts, cultural, humanities, and history sector leadership to talk about how we move all of these conversations forward, including education statewide, using the arts and cultural assets that we have. But what we're here to talk about today, and which Thomas will talk about in more depth, is the grantee flexibility. After seeing the pandemic's impact on our economy and understanding that both schools and nonprofits were having to pivot in this space, we reached out first to the Attorney General's office to seek their counsel on our agency's authority to revise our grant criteria to be more responsive to the pandemic and to you, both schools and nonprofits. We also contacted the National Endowment for the Arts about our federal funding constraints and the flexibility in response to the pandemic. Once we received feedback from both of these parties, we then, as a team, looked at revising our grant criteria to be responsive in this space, and then called an emergency meeting of our executive committee of our governing board and presented the revised criteria for their approval. What we hope that this will help with is addressing cash flow, reducing matching issues, because we know you're having to pivot in this space or you're losing additional funds, and looking at shifting to the virtual content if you're working to provide arts education resources to students in a virtual platform. Finally, we're trying to work with town halls and have many conversations with nonprofits and other organizations that are providing arts education. This is our arts education conversation, so I want to thank you again for that, for being here. And we are just here to learn from you, and we hope that you can provide us insight as we try to be responsive in the short term, but then have a dialogue today about long-term strategies and ways that we can support you in your work moving for the remainder of this year, as well as moving into next year. So thank you for your time, and I'll see if there are any questions on the chat box. Thank you.
All right, so far no questions, but thanks to everyone for introducing yourselves and where you're from. So since we didn't have time to add that into our presentation. All right, next I'm going to turn it over to Thomas Tran, Grants Director for fiscal year 2020 Arts Education Grant Update.
Hello, everyone. This is Thomas Tran, Grants Director here at Oklahoma Arts Council. I'm so glad to be here with you all today. Thank you so much for joining in. We're looking forward to speaking with you, giving you some updates, and having some time to talk and allow some space for some discussion. So today I am going to be covering some updates to our fiscal year 2020 grants. So as a reminder, what we define as fiscal year 2020 is from July 1st through June 30th. So the current academic year. This includes all of the awarded projects that are taking place right now through June 30th, 2020. So we will go over the revised grant program criteria that Amber briefly mentioned about earlier. We will go over the new COVID-19 impacts reports, and then also any possible changes that might take place to your grant projects that are in process right now. So the first topic is the revised grant program criteria. So in response to the anticipated challenges and impacts of the pandemic, our staff and governor-appointed board have worked together to explore different ways in which we can shift our grant making to reflect this new environment that schools are now operating in. We've consulted with the National Endowment for the Arts, as well as the Oklahoma Attorney General Council, to see what we are able to do within compliance of the state constitution and the terms of our own National Endowment for the Arts partnership grants. So this is what we came to the decision, is revising our grant program criteria. So what we're able to do is revise the criteria and include costs that are associated with the planning and delivery of virtual programming and content. So what does that mean for educators and schools? This means that if you're doing any distance learning, you can use your Oklahoma Arts Council funds that we have already granted to you to conduct any programming. So for example, you might have contracted with a teaching artist to work with your students. And as we're moving into this distance learning, if you have the time and if you are working into your schedule, you are able to work with that teaching artist and have them present that type of programming and teaching through virtual means online. So that's just one example of different ways that you're able to adapt your program and work within the grant proposal that has been awarded. So if you are choosing to do this, you can utilize the grant funds to support all of the previously allowable expenses. So this still includes any teaching artist fees and everything, as well as anything that might come up for virtual programming. So please feel free to contact our staff if you have questions about what's eligible and what's not, and if you are looking to adapt to your project. And we're here to help guide you through the process and see what we can do. We've seen some really great innovation going on in the arts sector, and we want to ensure that you, our grantees, are able to utilize your Oklahoma Arts Council funding to support your work during this time. So as always, you are encouraged to utilize your funds to support your educational work and also the payment of the teaching artists that you're contracting with. Our staff is currently researching best practices and models for delivering virtual programming and content. So we will be distributing more information soon about how you might be able to utilize that in your field too. So keep an eye out for that. The next topic here is any project changes. So I will briefly go over any possibilities that might have happened with your grant right now, and then we'll go in depth later into more information about how you should move forward. So again, we're addressing fiscal year 2020 grants. These are grants that are that fall within July 1st, 2019 through June 30th of 2020. That's this year. So Oklahoma Arts Council recognizes that you may have had to modify, postpone, or cancel your projects that are currently being supported by our funds due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Due to the nature of project-based funding and the terms of our grant contracts, we need to record any changes that take place to your funded project. So if anything has differentiated, if you had to cut the program short or change any aspects, move it online, then that's something that needs to be reflected in our reporting. So this is what we're about to discuss. So any changes that we are anticipating, this does include any project date changes, project modifications, or any cancellations to projects that have been awarded. Again, let's dive in with more detail as we walk through our new COVID-19 impact report. So the COVID-19 impact report, our staff has developed this new report as a response to the new requirements. This report will satisfy the contractual needs of notifying Oklahoma Arts Council of your project changes. This also informs us of the status of your projects and then collects some information so that we know how this pandemic is impacting your school, your community, and overall the arts in Oklahoma. The COVID-19 impact report is an online form that will be emailed to you, your organization's grant contact. And please note that this report is an additional required report for any project that has been impacted by the pandemic. So we are asking if anything has happened to your OAC funded projects that you complete this form. This does not replace your final report. So your final report is still needed to be submitted in order to start your payment process and receive your grant. Going through the report, this report, again, will be sent out to your grant contacts through an email, and it's an online form. So we are asking you to complete this impacts report for every project that has been impacted. So it may be one or it may be two. The beginning, just ask for your basic contact information. So your name, your organization, so that your school or your school district, and then your updated contact information in the case that you are no longer reachable at your school email or your school phone number. This is just so that we can follow up with you if we have any additional questions. Moving on to the next section, which is project information. This is where we'll gather your very basic information about the project that we funded. You'll select your grant program in the drop-down box. So that is either small grant support for schools or arts and alternative education. So if you can choose what aligns with your project. And then question number 6 is your project ID number. So it's the 4-digit number that's associated with your project and your grant award. You can find this through your email, your award notification, or through the grant system as well. All right, so this is the beef of the form. This is where you'll report any of the changes that happens to your project. So again, how we define project is what your grant encompassed. It may be the few weeks that you have a teaching artist in, or it may be the semester. It depends on your project. But I will walk you through every step, every option in this form, and then talk about how that can relate to your program and what that means and what we will do to move on from that and address your project. The first option is my project was partially executed but ended early due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So please choose this option if you were already doing work. Your teacher may already be in, your teaching artist in your classroom working on your project and learning goals, but it had to be cut short due to the pandemic. Please select this option if that's you, and we can see how to move forward, and we'll reach out to you and get more information. The next option, my project will occur in fiscal year 20, so that's before June 30th, but the dates will change. So are you changing the dates? I will mention that this form is being used for all of our grant programs, so nonprofit organizations are using this as well. Some of the language may not be easily translated into the work that you do, so this option we know is not an option for schools since you will not be returning to the classroom. The third option, my project will occur in fiscal year 20, and it will be held online or delivered through virtual means. So what this means is if you're looking into adapting your project for an online platform, are you going to be asking your teaching artists to deliver instruction online instead of in person. So if you select this option, we're going to ask for more information later. But again, this option will be best suited for you if you're moving your projects to an online platform and you're still wanting to pay your teaching artist and still execute the project. The fourth option, my project will occur in fiscal year 20. The dates will change. It will be held online or delivered through virtual means. Again, this is not applicable to schools. This next option is for cancellations. My project is canceled for fiscal year 20, but will be rescheduled after July 1st. What this option means is that you will not be executing your project before June 30th, and that you are planning on maybe bringing this project back in the fall whenever school resumes. So you can choose this option. What this means is that we will need to cancel your grant for this year. And the options to move forward here are if you have incurred any expenses, or if your teaching artist has already done some work, there is the possibility of claiming some of that money and getting that grant payment for any work that's already been done. So for example, you might have contracted with a teaching artist and they've already spent a lot of time planning, putting together the curriculum, putting together a timeline for the instruction. And if you are still looking to pay this teaching artist, even though the program is not happening, but you're paying for the time they have spent in putting together and designing your program, then that's still an option. We will reach out to you about this, but select this option here if that aligns with what you are doing. The last option, my project is canceled and will not be rescheduled. That means that you will not be holding your project and you don't have any plans on bringing it back in the fall. Again, the option here is you can choose to compensate your teaching artist for any work that may have happened, and we will be reaching out to you if you choose this option to get some further steps in. So again, those are the options for the project changes. Please feel free to send us any questions or give us a call if you have any questions about that. And I do want to emphasize that if you do need to cancel your grant, if it's not happening, you still have the option of claiming those expenses if you purchased any of those supplies, or if your teaching artist did some work. We can still grant out some money. It might not be the full amount, but just fill out this form, and once we have that information from you, we can get back to you and decide how to move forward. All right, moving on to the other questions in this form. Any date changes that may have occurred. Again, this may not be applicable to you as schools, but if you were changing your project dates, this is where you would put that in. Question number 9, online and or virtual programming delivery. So in an effort to support programs during the pandemic, again, we have revised our grant criteria to support any programs that may be occurring online. So going back to the option I spoke of earlier about if you were going to be adapting your program for virtual teaching and virtual learning, this is where you would include that information. So if you select that option, please put a brief description in there about what you're planning to do so that we know how your project is changing. All right, this last part of the impact form is an impact survey. Your responses to these questions will not affect your grant award. This is just data collection for us to know how this pandemic is affecting the arts sector and education in Oklahoma. So the only required question is question number 10. Please estimate the total decrease in individuals served as a result of rescheduling or canceling this project. So we do recognize that you may not have the hard numbers for this, but we just want to get a sense for how many students or how many teachers did not receive instruction or arts learning since you had to cancel or modify your grant. This is just so we can give some numbers, preliminary numbers, to see how the field has been impacted. So you can put your guesstimate in there. Questions 11 through 12 are not applicable to schools since they ask about private revenue and how much dollars your organization has lost. But question 13 is an optional question. So this is a narrative question where we ask for you to provide any additional information about how the pandemic has impacted your organization. So how has it impacted your school, your district, or your community? You can talk about maybe you had a cumulative art show or a cumulative performance at the end, and you are not able to have that anymore. So this is where you can really put that story in there so we can get some more information about the bigger scope of how this has changed the work that you're doing. And that is the end of our form there. So if you have any questions, again, please feel free to type it in the chat box. If you come up with a question after the town hall, then you can email me. Again, my name is Thomas. You can send me an email, give me a phone call, and any questions about managing your grant award, we're here to help you. Just a quick summary about what we covered today. So we talked about how funds can still be dispersed to you all if you move your content online, or if you decide to, if you do decide to cancel, you can still use your grant funds for any costs you've already incurred. So again, if you've already bought some supplies, and if your teaching artist has already done some work, then we can figure out how to move forward. Just fill out the form and we'll get back to you. And I want to thank you all again for the incredible work that you do. Please know that I, as well as the entire Oklahoma Arts Council staff, are always here to support you and your work and your community. So we look forward to hearing from you, and let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Thomas. We are having just a little bit of technical difficulty behind the scenes here, trying to get your breakout rooms ready. So I think we're going to try to do a little bit of a swap really quick. If we can switch the presentation over to Heidi and let her do the screen share, Thomas, and then we're going to have Joel take over as host. Thank you all for your patience. Just if we can take just a moment to do that. We'll get Jennifer queued up here.
Okay, are you all seeing the presentation?
Yes, yeah, we just need to go down to Jennifer's slide. There we go. Thank you, Heidi.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Jennifer, you are up.
All right. Well, hello and welcome, everyone. Hope you're all having a good afternoon and that this message finds you healthy and well. I'm Jennifer Allen Barron, the Arts Education Director, as you can see on that slide. I know that I've talked or emailed with many of you, so it's nice to see some familiar names in the chat there. If we haven't yet had the chance to connect, please know that I'm here and happy to talk at any time. Can I get a slide? I don't know. I'm going to give a secret password. All right. So I've gathered a few resources here for arts educators. First of all, there are some items from the State Department of Education. You can see they have a guide to distance learning and fine arts. So there are lots of additional resources and information there. And below that is another source of helpful information. It's CDAE, the State Education Agency Directors of Arts Education. Just rolls right off the tongue. That's why they call it CDAE. But they are full, and that link you can follow for lots of additional resources. You can find lesson plans, virtual field trips, and more. They've got dance, drama, music, film, media, and visual arts. So they've got excuse me, lots of different resources there for you to follow. If you have additional ideas to add of resources that you found helpful, please be sure to mention those whenever we move to the breakout room, or well, depending on what's going on with the breakout room. If not, then we may ask for those in the chat later on, but we'd love to hear what you're finding helpful as well. Could I get the next slide, please, from whoever is? All right, of course, with this shift to online content, there are some new considerations as well. How accessible is your content for students with disabilities? What do educators, parents, and teachers need to know about how online learning affects student privacy laws? So here are a couple links that'll get you started. Very important stuff to know. You know, as we go forward, not everyone has the same access to information or the same ability to take in that information. So there's some great guidance there that should inform your work. Next slide, please. All right. And if you're interested in reading more about this, these are a few states that have been kind of early to publish distance learning resources. Arkansas has actually had this on their website for a few years. Pardon me. So you can see there on these three states, different ways that they're addressing things and different resources that they're taking there. I always find it interesting to sort of compare ourselves and where we are to other states that are doing different things. Next slide, please. All right, last but not least, you may not be able to take a field trip, but you can, if you'd like, you can travel the world from the comfort of your living room. You can consider touring some of the most renowned museums in the world, or hear some performances by some acclaimed international symphonies. As you all know, there's just really an explosion of virtual content right now. It's a great time to explore that and take advantage of some world-class arts for free. These are only a tiny fraction of what's available, as I'm sure you are all aware, but these will get you started. And you know, you can almost think of any discipline you'd like to learn more about, and you can find some great online lesson plans there as well. So next slide, please. And I can put those links in the chat as well, because those are hyperlinked. But let's see. So with things changing as they are so rapidly in education, our agency has been looking at some ways to fill some sudden needs. And one initiative we're currently developing is commissioning teaching artists and arts educators to create some online curricula that address our new state standards. Those of you in the arts are likely aware that the State Board of Education just voted in February to accept new state fine art standards. For the first time, these will include not only visual arts and music, but also dance and drama theater. And they include grades all the way from pre-K through graduation. So very exciting times that fine arts educators now have the supports of those standards. So because these are brand new, you know, we'd love to see, it's kind of a perfect time to create some resources, some curriculum and lesson plan resources that can help bring those standards to life. So this is something that we're looking at. This is still in development, but our goals here are to provide students and home educators with some rich arts content while offering some support to educators. And I'll be happy to answer more questions about that, but as I mentioned, it is still in development. So that is all for me now. I hope that you're all staying safe and well, and I look forward to some discussion in the breakouts. I understand those are happening, and I will turn the floor back to Amber. So.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to finally close and just again reiterate our thanks to you. I see a lot of questions in the chat box, which we will definitely look at. We're going to save the chat box and address, and we can follow up with those either during this call or afterwards. I want to let everyone know that we're hearing and seeing some of these questions and want to be responsive to those. And then just again, in these chat conversations, please be very candid with us in ways that we can be responsive to you both in the short term and the long term. Hopefully we can clarify, but then also kind of pivot ourselves. We're also trying to redirect ourselves as a state agency and be relevant in this space. So thank you for your patience with us. And again, we want to maximize the ability to get as much money to you for the current fiscal year. Please fill out those reports and have our staff follow up with you so we can figure out how to maximize and get as much money out to schools and out to grantees. We're trying to be strategic so that the pandemic does not become punitive to our students and to our schools and to the nonprofits we serve. We're trying to figure out how do we work within the framework of the legality of what we've been given by our federal funding and our state legislature, but then maximizing that to get as much dollars to you so you can serve the students that you have. So thanks again for joining us today, and hopefully this candid space will be one that is uplifting and helps us as we move forward. Thank you.